Here's what you need. Small towel, screwdriver, pair of tweezers, Q-tips, isopropyl alcohol. I'm using 91%. Anything you can get your hands on is great. The higher the percentage, the better. And of course, the star of the show, your controller. Okay, first step, make sure your controller is off, of course. Then you're gonna flip it around, reveal these two little pads on each side. So essentially what you're gonna do is grab something thin. I'm gonna use my tweezers and just kind of get it in between the crevice. Might take you a couple tries, especially if you haven't done this on your controller before. There you go. If you haven't done this on your controller before, it'll probably take a little bit longer. I've popped this one open a few times. Okay, so now that we have those both off right there, you're gonna flip your controller back around and pop it up on both sides like so. Okay, you pull this off. This just wedges in. So you're gonna take that off, add that to your parts. Now, you can tell I'm an idiot, so both of mine are broken off, but right here, and here, there's gonna be two little plastic tabs that you're gonna wanna grab and pull back a little bit. Okay. Now, step 2. Turn our controller over. Now we gotta pop the bumpers out. So essentially what you're gonna do is grab your screwdriver, push down your trigger, and then just kind of wedge it out. This should come out pretty easy. Do that on both sides. And make sure you have both bumpers in your parts. Okay. Now, step 3, we have to take the bottom pad or casing off. Now this is pretty easy. Essentially what you're gonna do is you're gonna look around and locate the screws. There's one right here on each side. And then there is one right here under the bumpers on each side, and that's all you need to do. So you're gonna grab your screwdriver and just unscrew them out. This one's being a bit of a pain. There we go, Jesus. Okay, we're gonna flip it around, do the same thing right here. I recommend turning it around on its Joy-Cons or joysticks, just to get better leverage here. Okay, there we go. That's all the screws from the outer casing out. And make sure you save all 4 screws in your parts. Make sure you don't lose them. Okay, now on to step 4. We're just gonna take the bottom cover off. So you're gonna grab your controller, flip it around, and if it's new, you might have to take something and wedge along the edges, like so. Preferably something thin. I've popped this one open a couple of times, so I'm not gonna need to do that. But if it's a new controller, or if you haven't popped it open before, you're most likely gonna need something just to pry it open. Okay, now we have our casing. Add this to your parts. Shouldn't be easy to lose, so sure you're fine there. Now we move on to part 5, which is taking all of this out from the upper shell or the outer shell. And this is easier than it looks, substantially easier than it looks. So if you're having a panic attack right now going, oh, I don't know what to do, it's not very hard. I'm not a huge tech guy. I got this down first try, so it shouldn't be a problem for you, especially if you're smart, because I'm not. Okay, so first, what you're gonna wanna do is identify all 3 of the locking screws. If it's a newer controller, there's gonna be 5. So essentially, let me see if I can get a view. Okay, so you can see there's one right here. If you have a newer gen controller, there are going to be 2 locking screws on each side. They're going to be placed a little differently, but it's essentially the same takedown. Okay, so first we're going to take out our number 1 screw. And again, be careful not to lose these. we're going to go to our other side and extract the screw right here. Okay, there we go. Now that we have those two done, first, we're going to grab our pliers and remove these ribbon wires. So you want to be careful here. Note that neither of these are super important. All it is your controller microphone. If you use that, then it's probably important. But most people don't. You probably have a headset, so don't worry about them. They're extremely easy to take out there. You're going to take your tweezers. And let me see if I can get you guys a better angle. There we go. So you're going to grab this headpiece right here and lightly pull and wiggle out until it comes out like that. Okay, then you're going to do the same thing right here. This one, the ones they place right here tend to be a little stubborn, so you're going to have to slide one of your edges in between the head and the cord and use the same method, wiggle and nudge. Okay, and if this comes out, if this comes off, do not freak out. It just connects and slides right back in there. You don't have to connect it to anything. You only have to connect it to that one port we just disconnected it from. So if this little piece right here pops out, don't worry about it. Just slide it on in. We get you guys a better angle. Slide it on into its little cage right there, and then you're good to go. Okay. Now we have the third and most important ribbon wire. But first, we got to remove the last locking screw, which is going to be under the battery right here. Now, a lot of people will tell you disconnect the battery. You don't have to. If the controller's off, there's no risk of anything shocking you or anything, obviously. But, you know, just in case you don't want to take it out and then put it back in, you don't have to. Just set it to the side like I've done right here. Then you're going to get the fifth and last locking screw, or third if it's a Gen 1 controller like this one. Then you're going to unscrew it. And again, and I've said it a lot before, be careful not to lose these. Okay, now you're going to take your cover off right here. Should have that little chip in it right there, little ribbon wire. Add this to your parts. Now here we go. This is the board right here. Brandon, you should be showering more than once a week. That's gross, man. Ugh. Come on, dude. Ugh. Now for part, I don't know, I stopped counting at like 5. We got to remove this last ribbon wire. Now this one is extremely tough. It's not as flimsy as the other ones, but you still do have to be extremely careful because this connects to your touchpad up here. So if you break this, your touchpad will not work. So just, it's almost impossible to break unless you're deliberately trying to, but just, you know, try to be careful. So we're going to employ the same tactics around the head. Gently wiggle out. There you go. You guys see how easy that was? Now, you should be able to just wiggle it loose like that. Okay, there you go. Now first, before we take the filling out of the shell, you have to make sure to tuck the, on the newer gen controllers, I think they fixed this problem. They just like sanded off this part right here. But if it's an older gen, you're gonna, let me do it with tweezers so you guys can actually see what I'm doing. So you're gonna wanna grab it and thread it through that little hole right there. And then you can pull the innards out, okay. Okay, there we go. I grab this. This is what it should look like. Hold on. One of my options buttons fell out. Okay, this is what it should look like. Be careful of your share and options buttons, which are right here. They're not connected by anything, so they might just fall out. So be careful of these guys. Set it face down into your parts pile, or you know what? We'll set it right up here so you can see it. Okay. Now, we have the innards of the controller, and we're going to flip them over to reveal the Joy-Cons. Now, this is essentially the heart of your controller right here. This is the motherboard and everything. Don't worry about getting fingerprints on anything. It's not that fragile. Now, we're going to get to fixing stick drift. So what you're going to want to do on these Joy-Cons is Just grab them and pull slightly up. There you go. Pull the Joy-Cons off, reveal the innards of those. Do the same thing on the other side. Okay. And also, make sure to clean these. I mean, I haven't cleaned this controller in a while. I'm sure you can see some gunk on these joysticks, Joy-Cons, whatever you want to call them. So make sure to clean those off. That will keep your controller alive for longer. Okay, I'm going to set this down for a second. And here comes our power player of this cleaning, isopropyl alcohol. So what you're going to want to do is grab a couple of Q-tips. For specifically bad cases, like this controller that I have right here, this is a pretty bad case of stick drift. You're just going to want to pour a little tiny bit inside the mechanism. Now, so this won't ruin your controller as long as you don't douse it. I mean, like a couple drops and then spin it around. Okay, so first, for minor stick drift, we're going to open our isopropyl alcohol. Grab a Q-tip, dip it in there, turn it over, spin it around. Not spill that much. Okay. Now, we're going to grab our Q-tip and kind of just wash around here. Wash around there. Cat background noise. Then you're going to want to, kind of move the joystick around. Just get in there, right? Okay, now for the other side. Okay. Now, for particularly bad cases, which this controller has, most of you, if you're desperate enough to look this up on YouTube or wherever you found this, it might get reposted somewhere else later on. You probably have pretty dire stick drift. You're in dire need of a fix. So what I'm going to want you to do is grab your isopropyl alcohol and kind of just edge it. Get a tiny little bit. There you go. Into your Joy-Con there. Do it on the other side as well. There you go. Now, just grab them and move them around. They should feel a little bit stiff, which is good. That means they're cleaning out essentially. This all will essentially just dissolve any gunk. Okay, so once you're done with that, now we get to the reassembly. Okay, here we go. Final part, reassembly of the controller. So the first thing that you want to do is put your joysticks back on. It's an embarrassing amount of times that I've forgotten to do this. Forgotten to put the joystick covers back on. So I have reassembled the entire controller and realized, oh, those aren't on. And you have to disassemble it all again. So do not forget to put these back on. Okay, now I'm going to set this aside. And now we're going to clean out, or clean off, I suppose, your controller a little bit more before we get it fully disassembled. So get another Q-tip with some alcohol on it, like so. Grab your top. Make sure it's facing top down, buttons down, and then just look inside for any gunk. Like, there's some gross gunk right here, so we're just gonna scrub that off. Sometimes when you eat something and then you play with your controller, sometimes some gunk gets in here. It's totally fine. It's normal. Sometimes your hands get sweaty and stuff gets in your controllers. Your sweat gets in your controllers, clogs up some of the stuff, Now, just check your buttons, make sure they're not grimy or anything. Don't take these out. You can put them back in if you do, but unless you have an issue with your buttons, these just stay in, these little rubber pads. Okay, so now that you're done with that, just touching up everything. Now, we're going to take our controller innards and just kind of... Let me get a better angle for you guys. Hold on, that was bad. Okay, so you're just going to put them in like this. Now, one thing that you kind of have to be aware of is those ribbon wires. Okay, so your ribbon wires. This one at the bottom, you can see them right there. he likes to get stuck under the motherboard. Literally all you have to do is just grab him with your screwdriver and kind of wedge him out. Be a little careful. He's tough, though. Don't worry about him. Okay. When you set it back down, you're all good. And make sure this blue ribbon wire came through that hole. Again, if you have a newer controller, it's just... Look, they don't last as long, but man, they're so easy to take apart. Okay, so now we're going to plug the ribbon wires back in. Okay, so you see your blue ribbon wire. You're going to grab your tweezers, grab the back of it, and essentially just align it into this little plug-in. It's just like plugging in a phone charger. It's a little smaller. There you go. Just give it a little... Make sure it's seated with your finger. Just press gently. Make sure it doesn't wiggle at all. And there you go. This is the only ribbon wire that really matters, and it's that easy to reconnect. Okay, so now we're going to grab our plate, put it right here. Future Cam here. I just realized that I didn't plug in the orange ribbon cables. Use the same technique you used on the blue one to plug those back in. I had to open up the controller all again and then plug them back in. I didn't record it because it was late at night and I was tired, but just make sure you plug them both back in. Don't be as stupid as I am. Thank you. One of our 7 or 9 screws. Put it into the spot, which is right there. Battery to the side. Thank you. Okay, then you're going to grab your screwdriver. Screw it back in. Okay. You're gonna place your battery right there. Make sure it's seated, not wiggle at all. Okay, there we go. Now you're gonna grab one more of your 7 or 9 screws. Again, this is the part where my guide might not be exact to your type of controller. If it's a Gen 2, there's going to be 2 screws that go on each side. This is a Gen 1, so there's only going to be 1 screw that goes on each side. So we just got to find the area. There it is right there. And then just screw it in. Well, also, if your controller is a Gen 2, your screws will be silver instead of painted the exact same color as the controller internals. Which I can tell you, as somebody who's taken these apart, is so much more convenient. Okay, you're going to take another one of your screws and screw on the other side. Oop. Okay, now we're going to take our bottom and kind of, okay, let me turn around the controller so you guys can see it. So we're going to take the bottom and we are going to kind of wedge it in like that and then press down firmly. There you go. Now, at this point, your controller is essentially assembled. We just have a couple finishing touches to do. Okay, so first, I like to screw in the screws right here and here and put the bumpers back on. So you're going to grab one of your 4 remaining screws and put it in here. Perfect. Then you're going to grab another one of your screws and screw it in on the other side. Oh, hold on. Got to realign that with my screwdriver there. And you're going to screw it in on the other side. Okay, now you're going to put your bumpers back on. We'll start with R1. So literally all you're going to do is align it and then snap it back in. Make sure it presses all right. Then move to the other side. Now you're going to grab L1 and do the same thing. Okay, then we're going to flip it over, turn it upside down, and install our last 2 screws. So we're going to grab our first one, and screw it in. God damn it. And screw it in right here. Okay. Now we're going to grab our last screw and screw it in the other side. Now you're going to flip your controller around. Make sure you press these tabs back in. That's how I broke mine off. The tabs don't matter necessarily, or like literally at all, but you know, it doesn't look nice to have snapped off tabs. So just push them back in, make sure you do that. And then you're going to grab your final piece, put these two prongs into the two holes right here, and then essentially just going to press it up and down firmly. Then you're just going to press it firmly across the base of the grips. And there you go. Basically a brand new controller. Your stick drift should be fixed. If it's not, and you tried the light method, go back in, try the heavy method. And there you go, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you found it helpful, informative, and I hope it fixed your controller, most of all. Have a good day, and fuck you, Brandon, you lazy bitch.